Hi, it's Troy at the Full Setup here, back with another video for you today, and today we're doing a $75 graphics card showdown. We're doing new versus old, and I'm going to take a GT 1030 2GB and we're going to put it against the GTX 760 2GB. And the reason I'm making this video is when you're on a budget, especially when it comes to graphics cards, I always think you're better off buying second hand. Now obviously it's going to be used, and so you're not going to have a warranty. It's probably going to have larger power requirements, but what's the most important thing when it comes to gaming? That's right, FPS. And generally the older cards will do better price to performance if we don't think about power. So the graphics cards that I've got for you today are an Msi Gt 1030 Aero Itx, full unboxing of that on my channel. Now that's a Pascal graphics card running at 384 CUDA cores. It's got 2GB of memory running at 6GB per second, but it's on a super tiny 64-bit bus. But as for the core clocks, they're much higher than the GTX 760. It's running at 1518 MHz boost, but you probably will get a little bit more boost as well if you keep the graphics card nice and cool. As for power requirements as well, 30-watt power requirement, no 6-pin, you can pretty much plug it in any PC. Moving on to the older, more power-hungry GTX 760 then. Well, that's running on Kepler. I think it's about 4 years old now, 4.5 years old. It's got 1152 CUDA cores, 2GB of GDDR5 again, running on 256-bit bus. The memory clock is also the same, it's clocked at 6GB per second, and the maximum boost clock on this is 1137 MHz. Now, I did originally actually order a 4GB version, but they sent me a 2. So the 2GB version cost me £65 after I was refunded, but you can pick up a 4GB for £75, which was the same price that I paid for the GT 1030. So there's all the specs. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to run some benchmarks. I'm then going to give you my final thoughts, and also I am going to be giving away one of these graphics cards today. So if you want to win that graphics card, please make sure you check that at the end of the video. Now, as for the test setup then, we have a Ryzen 1700 overclocked to 3.9 GHz, and we are running 16GB of Corsair DDR4 running at its full rated 3200 MHz. Now also for the testing as well, I've decided to do everything at 1080p low settings. I want to give the GT 1030 a chance. I don't really think it's a gaming graphics card. Moving on to the Heaven benchmark then. Now the GT 1030 got a minimum FPS of 29.2, a maximum of 132.2, and an average of 77.7. Well, how did the GTX 760 do? Well, the minimum FPS was very close, it was at 36.6, but look at the maximum FPS there, 237 and an average of 146, so that's twice as powerful really as the GT 1030. Now that's Heaven benchmark. I know you definitely want to see some games, so let's throw something a little bit more intensive at it then. Cry Primal, 1080p, low settings. The GT 1030 got a minimum of 33, a maximum of 39 and an average of 35 FPS, which I wouldn't really class as playable. So the GTX 760 then, when we had a minimum of 56, a maximum of 68 and an average of 61. Now you probably could add a few medium settings in there and drop the FPS maybe down to 55, and I'll definitely recommend that with this game. Shadow of Mordor, the GT 1030 got a minimum of 40 FPS, a maximum of 74.3 and an average of 55.4, so you could definitely mix up a few medium settings in there. Well, how did the GTX 760 go? Well, the GTX 760 got a minimum of 76.2 FPS, a maximum of 152.6 and an average of 106.5 FPS, so you would be playing this game at medium all day long, and it's definitely scoring twice as high as the GT 1030 again. Rise of the Tomb Raider then, I've always seen this to be a very intensive benchmark, especially at Ultra. So how does it handle 1080p at low settings? Well, the GT 1030 got a minimum of 26.8, a maximum of 75.2 and an average of 41.8. Sort of playable on Tomb Raider, but still, again, I wouldn't call that a playable frame rate on a PC anyway. How did the GTX 760 do then? Well, we had a minimum of 37.9, a maximum of 121.2 and an average of 67.3, so again you could probably put a few medium settings into the mix with the GTX 760. Time to move on to the most intensive gaming benchmark I've got for you today then, Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now the GT 1030 got a minimum of 22.5, a maximum of 36 and an average of 27 FPS, so that's definitely not playable. Well, how did the 760 do? Well, not that much better, to be fair. Like I said, very intensive game. We had a minimum of 40 FPS, we had a maximum of 69.1 and an average of 56.2, so I don't think you're going to be mixing too many medium settings in with that. So what do those gaming benchmarks tell us then? Well, it tells me what I always knew was going to happen. The GT 1030 is not a 1080p gaming card when it comes to AAA titles. It might run perfectly fine in eSport titles like Overwatch, Dota and League of Legends, but really, would I recommend buying this graphics card? I wouldn't. If you want to go brand new, I would probably spend a little bit extra and I'd buy a 1050 or an RX 560, but if you're looking at getting a used graphics card, you couldn't go wrong with the GTX 760 or maybe even a 750 Ti. So moving on to the competition side of things, well, I'm giving away one of these graphics cards today. Now, it's a bit of an awkward one. I can't really decide which one to give away, so I'm going to have to make a decision right here on the spot. Well, I'm not going to give away the GT 1030 because you can't really game on it. So I'm going to give away the GTX 760. Now, this is an international competition. Anyone can enter. I'm going to announce this, the winner, in about a month because I'm going to try and plan to do monthly competitions. If you want to enter it, it's pretty simple. Go over to my channel and subscribe. Once you're over to my channel and you subscribe, if you click on the Facebook link, I don't really use my social media other than YouTube that much, and I want to start using it. So if you can go over to my Facebook, leave a like, and then just message me with some contact details and tell me a little bit about something about yourself as well. I'm really interested what PC you're using at the moment, what games you like to play, what you're excited for. Have you just got a new mouse, a new keyboard? What are you using? Let me know so I can feature it in some upcoming videos. Well, I hope this video has helped you all out today. I'll make a decision, especially if you were going to buy the GT 1030. Do not buy it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Goodbye.